at some point the math is the math.
I think we can do a better job using that information.
It reinforces my belief that I have the best constituents. Hello, District 6. Hello, Austin. Hello, Clawback viewers. Here we are, another week in paradise. Although, with everybody staying home, it could literally be any week of any year of any month. I don't know if y'all have seen literally, I don't even know what the weather is like. I've been staying in my house so much, and I see the news reports of 100-degree heat, but I have an air conditioning vent right above me in the spare bedroom where I film this, so it literally could be any weather whatsoever outside. Losing all track of time and space. This is such a crazy situation. Oh, I take my name doesn't need to be up there like that. So we're in July. We took the show off for 2 weeks and then came back last week. Had a great show. Got a great show today. Representative John Bucy is with us. Leslie Sisson is our musical guest. Mike Clark-Madison of the Austin Chronicle. It's going to be a really good show, talking about very different stuff than we normally talk about on this show. But I do want to start with the critical topic of the day and bring up our pandemic dashboards. Here's the risk-based guidelines, the thing that determines what is the level of stay-at-home order that the community is going to operate under. The mayor does a great show, his Got a Minute show that he does every day. So if you want the minute-to-minute update, you can follow Mayor Adler's show that he does every night. But you can see that in terms of this metric, which is what we use to determine the stages, we are leveling off right at that line between stage 4 and stage 5. And, while we had that really dramatic spike in June and early July, it looks like we're settling into something which is not great, but it's certainly better than it getting worse. In fact, when you look at the other dashboard, and for reminder, you can see both of these dashboards and all of the information that the city has put together on this pandemic, austintexas.gov/COVID-19. And you can go to the two dashboards, digital dashboard and the staging dashboard. This is the staging one, determines the stages. That's why it's called that. And then this is the general dashboard where you can see kind of the high level metrics facing this community. And again, as a reminder for my constituents in Williamson County, of whom I am also a resident of Williamson County, while the title of this says Travis County, it does include the Williamson County part of the city of Austin, and the Williamson County dashboard does not include the Williamson County part of the city of Austin. So they're not overlapping. Nobody's getting double counted. But you can see the stats here. We still have a pretty dramatic disparity when it comes to the impact based on race. We have still a large number of hospitalizations happening in the Hispanic community, much greater than the Hispanic community's percentage of our community. So there's still a lot of work to be done on getting that back in line and ensuring that this pandemic is not that we're not missing something when it comes to addressing the impacts of this pandemic. We want to make sure that nobody's being left behind, frankly. This is a very challenging, I was going to say it's challenging and unprecedented. We've heard all the words. I'm out of the words. And you get into the zip code map, pull the zip code map. I'm not a fan of this map because this zip code map is based on count, but it's not the same amount of people in every zip code. The 78660, which is Pflugerville, has a huge population compared to zip codes in District 6. So, it's interesting, but I'm not quite sure how valuable this map is in determining where cases are being located, because it's just not right. If it was the percentage of population of the zip code, it would maybe work better. But we've got to keep going. We've got to keep sticking to our stay-at-home orders. We got to keep sticking to our mask orders. The governor now has said local school districts can determine when they open. All 3 school districts covering District 6. Let me take that off. All 3 school districts covering District 6 now. I think Leander did it as well. Delaying the start of in-person classes while more data keeps coming in. The letter that I saw from Round Rock ISD, I was really glad to see them making that move. Thanks to Superintendent Steve Flores and the whole school board, Amy Weir, Corey Vessa, who's a District 6 resident, and good luck to Steve Math, who has now stepped down from the Board of Trustees in Round Rock ISD, taking his career to a new place. It's interesting when I work with other council members on the city council, they generally speaking just look at AISD, but the vast majority of District 6 is Round Rock ISD and Leander ISD, but for the area just around Davis Elementary, which is on Duval Road, Angus Valley, Mesa Park, Balcones Woods neighborhoods. So as it is, right, half Williams County, half Travis County, 3 school districts, it is not a simple set of jurisdictions when we're trying to solve problems in District 6. The other thing I wanted to just give y'all an update, normally in July, the council is kind of on break. And as a practical matter, what it means is we're not doubling up on the meetings. So it gives us time to kind of play catch up on all the other work that normally needs to happen. But it usually means I don't have a ton of meetings I have to go to. Well, my calendar looks like a calendar in the middle of the busy season right now. Just in the last week, I've had meetings on Project Connect. I've had budget, right? Because the city budget came out, meeting with the Austin Youth Council, which is just a really cool program where there are representatives from high schools that form kind of a city council style body and then try to do work for their community. We've got the newest representative from District 6, who's a student at McNeil High School, talked to some small businesses in the Chamber of Commerce about impacts related to the pandemic, talked to Seton. They're building a new children's hospital in District 6 out on property near Avery Ranch Boulevard and 183, and we're working on some stuff with them in terms of the community benefit. A lot of conversation, of course, around public safety. Chairing the public safety committee, it is a pretty tall order to be the committee that is responsible to oversee what is a majority of the city budget. Once you get police, fire, EMS, code enforcement, and the municipal court, you're pushing 60, 70% of the city budget. And so there's a lot of work to be done there. Our next public safety committee meeting is on Monday. Tune in on atxn.tv for that meeting. We're going to be digging into the metrics around how you measure safety, specifically the police department. Going to dig into that police budget. A lot of interesting work to be done there, and have a conversation with with a consulting firm out of New Orleans that did a preliminary analysis of 911 calls, which is going to be a great starting point to think about how we might reimagine some of the systems we've created that respond to 911 calls. And not to have a spoiler alert, but it turns out violent crime is not a majority of the 911 calls. There's a lot of other stuff going on in this community, and we are asking police officers to do all that work. Other stuff on my calendar this week, talking to the Parks Foundation about their budget requests, talking to EMS, talked to the Transportation Department. The Anderson Mill Road project is underway. You'll probably start seeing the equipment coming out there on Anderson Mill Road, the project that I've been working on for quite a long time. Then yesterday on Thursday, we had nearly all day special called meetings talking about Tesla, talking about tax rate issues and the possibility of putting a tax rate election on the ballot in November. And kudos to the media who covered that. There was a risk of confusion because this Tesla deal that you may have read about is actually a deal with Travis County and Del Valle ISD. They're not coming to the city of Austin for a tax break of any kind, because in fact, this factory they want to build is not in the city of Austin. It is just outside the city limits on the other side of town from us, kind of closer to the airport area. But because of the weirdness of how state law says who can say what, there's a couple of development rules that the city is still responsible for. So we're trying to figure out what those need to be. When you're building a factory that is many times the size of a football field, you don't really have development rules set up for that type of development. So we have to figure out how to make that move forward. And then talking about, again, like 911 public safety budget, there's the Spicewood Springs Hotel that some of our folks in District 6 are concerned about. You're going to see some stuff move forward on that in the coming weeks. Just a lot of great work happening. Next week, my calendar full again, heading into a public hearing on the city budget. on the 23rd of July. If you want to come and speak to the council virtually, you can sign up on the city website, austintexas.gov. I think that's enough for me. I want to bring up my first guest, someone with whom I have worked closely and have benefited from his leadership at the state legislature, State Representative John Bucy. Hello, John.
Hey, Councilman. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Happy to be here.
Yeah, thanks for returning to the show.
Yeah.
You're our first returning guest on the Clawback.
Well, anytime you need me, I like to be here. Councilman Flanagan and I have been working together for many, many years, and it's been a haul. Whether it's been building grassroots initially, going through defeats together, and building each other back up, and then now working on legislation between state and local city and our needs and collaboration. So it's been a great relationship, and I look forward to our continued success and working together.
Thanks, John. Oh, and happy birthday. You had a birthday recently, right?
Yeah, I turned 36. I'm getting up there.
Well, in honor of that.
Uh-oh.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear John Bucy. Happy birthday to you.
I couldn't help myself. I got to show that.
We had that on the big screen. We did a drive-in movie theater, social distance. Everyone stayed in their cars. But we had you up on the big screen, Jimmy. So there were 3 of you on the big screen. So it was a little intense for everybody.
Don't tell the Republicans; they'll lose their mind. 3 Jimmys. Oh my gosh!
There you go. Yeah,
they wouldn't be able to handle it. So you're on the campaign trail. We're both on the campaign trail right now. Headed to November elections in Williamson County. We had some primary runoffs. Those are finally over.
We have a slate of candidates now, so we can all get to work as a unified team and work up and down the ballot, which is so important to be unified and to support our ticket and whether that's from top to bottom. I mean, primaries are hard. Those of you in Austin know that for sure. Primaries are a challenge. Sometimes our people don't win them. The people we wanted to win them don't win them, but I believe in the greater purpose of the Democratic Party. And so I'm happy to be on the team and move forward and work for the slate.
Yeah, I'm happy to be on the team with you too, Representative. So how's your baby girl doing?
She's good. She's almost 6 months old. I mean, she spent her entire life really thinking that there's only 3 people in this world because of my wife and I and my mother-in-law has been quarantining with us and helping and being a part of it. So I think she thinks there's 3 of us and then a bunch of people on Zoom meetings. So,
well, I hope everybody's healthy and safe and
doing really well. She's doing really well.
That's great. We're dealing with a lot of stuff in the city as I kind of daylighted in my introduction. And a lot of that stuff ends up being governed by the state legislature. But one of the things that you worked on, that you led on as a freshman representative, was Medicaid expansion. Yeah. And I just saw a story that Oklahoma is now going to expand Medicaid. What's up with that?
I don't know how the Texas Republicans allowed Oklahoma to beat us to Medicaid expansion. I'm happy for their people in their state. It's no sense. I mean, it makes no sense to oppose Medicaid expansion. I think it's important to always remind people that whether we pass Medicaid expansion or not, you still get taxed on it. So you're still paying for it. So let's bring our tax dollars home to Texas and take care of Texans. And as we've seen the numbers shift, the benefits are only growing. More people will be impacted. More of our tax dollars will come home. We used to talk about 1.4 million Texans and $100 billion over 10 years. That number has gone up in more recent estimates, and now we'd be bringing home $110 billion. That's 1.5 million Texans that could get coverage just by passing Medicaid expansion. I mean, the governor could even get it done this November if he wanted to. We could get it on the ballot. There are options available. We can make it where the people get to vote on it. That's one of the pieces of legislation I filed, was where it would go to the voters, so then the Republicans don't have to own it. They can say, let's let the voters decide. And that's what red states like Oklahoma have done, is they've let the voters decide on the matter. And we see what happens when they do. People vote for it. There's studies that indicate that a vast majority of Texans want Medicaid expansion. I think it was something like 65% in a poll showed that Texans want to pass Medicaid expansion. This is bipartisan. It's common sense. It's our tax dollars, and it saves lives. And here's the other kicker. If you already have health insurance, you're already taken care of, it will lower your premium too. And it will also lower your county and city bills. So it's just a win-win across the board. It's dumb politics that we haven't passed Medicaid expansion. It all stems from kind of a Republican political movement to be anti-President Obama. I would hope we are so many years removed from that fight now that we can get past the politics and just do what's right for the people of Texas. So it's time for the governor to act. Let's pass Medicaid expansion. Let's save Texas lives. Let's bring our tax dollars home, but also let's save everybody's pocketbook. Everybody would benefit.
Well, thank you for your leadership on that. It is not common for a freshman representative to take point on such an important piece of legislation. And I think it's a real testament to the leadership you provide in the state of Texas, not just in House District 136, which is the Williamson County portion of Austin, Cedar Park, and Leander, where you are a rock star, in my opinion, but also amongst your colleagues in the House, being able to take that on. How many votes was it shy?
So we got 67 votes, which came down the party line. You know, you need 76, so you need a majority in the House, and then to pass legislation. Now on an amendment like this, we were just trying to do an amendment to the budget because they wouldn't even let the legislation be heard. So in committee, I mean, that's how visceral this fight has gotten, that they won't let committees even hear these types of legislation. So it's pretty depressing. But I tell you, the majority of the House is at stake in this election cycle. We're going to flip the Texas House. Texas House will pass Medicaid expansion next session. And then, the burden will be, will the senators continue to ignore the health and lives of the people of Texas? And we'll find out. That'll be on the table next session.
Well, we've definitely got a big election coming up. There are 6 House districts that overlap my one city council district.
Yeah.
6. And your House District 136 is the largest of the 6.
Yeah.
But also Representative Tallarico, who represents kind of the other third of Williamson County, and then Representatives Israel, Goodwin, Howard, and Hinojosa somehow through gerrymandering represent. I have 6 House representatives for my one council district.
And 3 of us are freshmen that really have to work hard to defend our seats. But that first defense is your most vulnerable time, we know. So we got to be working with Goodwin and Tallarico and myself.
Well, thanks so much, Representative Bucy, for joining the show today. If folks want to help you or other House members who are trying to do right by this community, if you want to help them get reelected, what do you suggest?
Well, you obviously can go to our websites, bucyfortexas.com, and donate. We're going to need volunteers, and that's going to mean a lot of phone calls this time. I mean, we're going to be COVID safe, so we're going to be making phone calls, and we've got to connect with our neighbors still. We don't get to take campaigns off because of the pandemic. We just have to do it differently. So if you go to our website, you can sign up to be a volunteer. You can sign up to make sure you have a yard sign. Lots of people are taking healthy walks in their community, so yard signs might make a bigger impact than they usually do. So we hope to get those out to your yard, and we'll need you to sign up to be volunteer phone callers for us. It's going to be important.
All right. Well, you heard it from the representative. Everybody get involved and sign up to volunteer. Representative Bucy, thank you so much for being our first returning guest on the Clawback Live.
Councilman, thank you so much. Anytime. I appreciate it.
All right. Bye-bye. There we go. Got that better. So Representative Bucy and I, we both ran back in 2014 and came up short in our elections then, but we did not give up on this community. And now I serve representing Far Northwest Austin in the council, and John serves representing Far Northwest in Williamson County, Cedar Park, and Leander in the Texas House. And he's been such a great partner, not just doing good work for the state, but also for the city of Austin, having brought 2 different bills to the House on our behalf. One that would have allowed us to bring to create senior discounts or veteran discounts on the drainage fee, which is a fee you see on your utility bills, and another that would have undone an old exemption that lets developers not pay for the cost of infrastructure in the area around Lakeline Mall. It's common wisdom that in the House you got to bring a bill more than once, so none of those bills moved to the finish line. Although our drainage fee bill made it all the way to calendars, which I thought was great, and definitely thanks to Representative Bucy for being a great partner. I want to bring up our musical guest. This is super exciting. We've been bringing on musical guests. Last week we had Monsoon Dance Company. This week, we are returning to our roots, bringing on a local musician. I want to welcome Leslie Sisson with Moving Panoramas. Hi, Leslie.
Hi, Jimmy. How are you?
I am doing well. I don't know. How do we answer that question anymore?
I don't know. You have long answers because there's more time. Not for you, but for me. Right?
Yeah, for us, and I've talked to other council members about this. For us, we're somehow busier.
Yeah.
We're somehow busier. I don't have to sit in traffic 2 hours a day like I used to, driving from Williamson County to City Hall. But I somehow now have more than 2 hours of additional meetings than I would have otherwise had.
Yeah.
It's crazy. What about you? What is life what has your life been as a working musician during this pandemic?
Well, it's not working. It's been quiet. I don't do a lot of live streams, and I don't. I'm home alone most of the time, and my band, we keep in touch and we talk about things that we might do. But we did one stream together in the very beginning of all this, and then I've done a few solo things, and I just haven't felt the time. I have actually been busy as more than I normally am, but with different elements of my life that I'm focusing on at the moment. But it's not so bad. I'm healthy and I'm safe, and I'm just trying to figure out what now, So
that's where a lot of folks are. Certainly, as I've worked with many folks in the arts and music industries and in the local area, it's a lot of how do we move forward? Tell me more about Moving Panoramas. You've got a whole band that you front for.
Yeah.
It's hard to bring a whole band onto a show in this way, so I'm glad to have you here. But I want to hear more about your band.
We were originally started off as a 3-piece, and now we're a 5-piece, and it's dreamy rock. It's melodic and loud, but also sensitive and quiet sometimes. It's my outlet. I never expected it to get as much response as it's gotten, but it's been my heart for the past 5 years, and and this town has done a lot for us, and we've toured nationally, internationally, if you count Canada. We've done all the things that bands do, and I was realizing before the pandemic hit that things were starting to change in the music world anyways for bands at my level. Touring just wasn't a wise option anymore, and how would we reach people if we don't tour? And we were getting like a massive radio play nationally and internationally, but we just didn't want to take the band on the road because it cost a lot of money and probably didn't return much either. So, but hey, one of the editors for the Austin Chronicle told me Austin is the oasis for music. So why would you want to leave the island? If you build it, they will come. And it's true. People have come here to see us if we can't make it to them, so we're just kind of making do, because the music industry was changing before all this. And now this is forcing a lot of change that probably didn't need to happen, but I don't know. It's great. I love my band, and I'm still writing music, and we're talking about doing new things. So, we're just taking a long nap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and you said that you just toured when you toured with the city into Asia recently. Isn't that right? Were you touring? Was that a solo? Did you tour with your band? Tell me about this tour.
Well, this was Project ATX6, which is kind of an ambassador program for Austin musicians. And each year they select 6 musicians to collaborate and play each other's music and travel internationally to kind of spread the word of Austin music. And it's a wonderful program. And so I was a part of it this year, and we were in Thailand and Japan right when this pandemic started. And when we left the States, we were like, should we get masks? There were like a few cases in Thailand and Japan, but that was it. But we were there for a small chunk of time. And then by the time we came back, it had already spread and it was already here. So, we wore masks and we did all the things that people were doing here. And it was wonderful. The experience was beautiful. And to play a music festival in Thailand, I never thought I'd put that one on the books. But but it got cut short because we were supposed to be in England in May. And of course, we weren't because of the pandemic. And that's okay. that's the one thing about all this for me, is that it's okay, because there's always a place for music elsewhere in my life and other people's lives, and people are figuring it out. So but yeah, I mean, we were, I came back and I wasn't feeling too well, and I know a few people in my group were sick, but there weren't tests at that time, and I don't know if it was COVID, but I mean, we were definitely on planes that shared people with China, and that was where it was really thick at the time. So we were lucky. I think if I had known what was going to happen going into it, I may have reconsidered. But whatever.
It's one of those things where, if we had a even minimally functional federal government, there might have been more protections
Oh my gosh.
in place and more preparation.
I know.
Unfortunately, we do not have a minimally functional federal government. And
Nope.
my staff is reminding me before I
Hi.
get letters from my constituents,
Yeah.
ATX6 Tour, it was a nonprofit
Yes.
entity put that program together. You're not paying
Mm-mm.
your property taxes to send musicians to Thailand. Everybody
no.
calm down.
It's all private donors. Yeah. It's all
Private donors.
And we raise money too. So yeah. And we don't get paid.
Yeah.
It's just for the experience. So
We do so much work with the music community here in Austin. It's important that we're bringing in partners to do that work, and the city does some of it too, primarily funded through hotel tax and
Right.
through other corporate partners, through Visit Austin and those types, all good stuff. But we're getting long. I don't know. I keep thinking I'm going to do a 30-minute show, and then I never do a 30-minute show anymore. But you've got a song prepared for us. You're going to share share some of your music with us.
yes, here goes Hazy.
All right, Hazy.
Put the dog down. Pick up Conway. This is
Conway.
Conway is the name of this guitar, because it used to belong to Conway Twitty. True story.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It's a great story. It was my dad's, and it was probably in my house most of my life. He got it in the 80s from a Conway Twitty's bus driver who needed $500 when their bus broke down. Conway and the crew flew to the next show, and the bus driver took the bus to this business next to my dad's business to work on the bus, and he needed $500 cash to fly to the next show, and so my dad gave him $500 and held the guitar for him, and he said, well, this is Conway's guitar. It's his bus guitar. It doesn't even have an electric input in it or anything. So who knows how many songs are written on it. And my dad was invited by the tour manager a while later to go on a cruise with Conway. And he was like, oh, should I bring the guitar? And he was like, nah, you keep it. So
Wow.
it's
That's
a 1950s Gibson. Anyway, that's a long story that I made short, but usually I make my long stories long. So I'm going to do a song called Dance Floor. I'm editing it a little bit for sake of time. Because, I think we all want to kind of be on a dance floor right now. And it's also about, living your dreams and not being afraid to do things that you're afraid of. Dancing is a metaphor for living. So I know we could all use a little bit of living right now. So yeah, this is a Moving Panoramas song that I wrote called Dance Floor. Stepping off the stage, putting you away. Don't make eyes with the guys trying to make it across your way. Can I have these dance? No, thanks, I can't. Don't be afraid. Allow me to show you the way. What are you waiting for? Now's our time to get on the dance floor. Move your feet from the back door. Don't be scared of the dance floor. Holding up the bar, leaning on the pole. Turn around when they try to turn you on some more. It's okay if you can't. I used to could not do. We all started somewhere. Now it's time for you to start too. What are you waiting for? Now's our time to get on the dance floor. Don't you fret about your feet no more. Take my hand to the dance bar, dance bar, dance bar, dance bar.
Yeah, that was awesome.
It's usually louder with the other people, but we'll get back to that someday.
Yes, we will. Yes, we will. Leslie, thank you so much for
Thank
coming
you,
on the
Jimmy.
show and sharing your music with me and with District 6 in the city of Austin. And be safe and stay healthy as we work through this as a community. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
You too. Thank you, Jimmy.
The banner off of there. Another great musical guest for the Clawback. Thanks again to my amazing team who helps pull these guests together, especially our musical guests, and gets them set up with the right audio equipment and makes the audio sound better. I hope you all have noticed as you've watched the episodes that we've really been trying to step up our game. And Leslie was another great example of that. All right, let's move right into our final guest. I don't even know how to introduce this guy. He's a either the secret controller of information in our city, or he's the guy who you might disagree with when you see his name in print. The amazing editor at the Austin Chronicle, Mike Clark-Madison. Hi, Mike.
Hey, Jimmy. How you doing? Can you hear me?
I am here. Yes. I am somehow still here. How are you, Mike? I mean, first off, what has it been like at the Chronicle during these last 4 months? I know there was a case that had hit one of the staff at the Chronicle, but what's it like just being media right now?
Well, it's intense. I mean, as you said, the Chronicle, for me, remember the timing of this, the primary was March 2nd. And then the day that South by was canceled was March 5th. And then by the end of March, we had a diagnosed case from one of my coworkers. And so our building was shut down. And so pretty much in a hurry, had to figure out how to put the paper out remotely. And in the beginning, we only were doing it electronically, but we've gone back to print. We're doing a weekly print issue. And people are really engaged right now. We're getting lots of pickup of the print issues. Lots of people are following us online, just because we have news. And it's not just, because we don't have all just the sort of health department news from COVID, like you open the show with. I mean, we've been doing a lot of coverage of how it's been affecting, obviously, the food scene, the music scene, the film scene, and as well as the political things. And how we were moving toward recovery and how we are now not moving toward recovery, at least for a while. But yeah, I mean, people have wanted to know all of this. We've always had, even as our advertisers were obviously struggling, our circulation was great. So yeah, we were trying to balance that. And we have a fairly small paper, and we're working completely remotely. Our office is back open, but we're not there every week. So all of that together has been really intense, but it's been good. It's been good and intense. So
yeah, and I think the Chronicle for many years has done some of the best long form journalism on City Hall. You might get a 2-minute spot on KXAN, but if you really want to know what's going on, you almost have to pick up the Chronicle. It's not that easy for my district so much. It's always a challenge to try and cover the far edges, but I know the online edition is always really valuable, and a lot of my folks still read. But the last 4 months is not your whole experience covering local news in the city. I mean, I don't want to be indelicate, Mike, but you've been around.
I started covering, yes. I started covering Austin City Hall in 1990. And I was at the Chronicle from 1990 to 2005. I actually was at the Business Journal for a while before the Chronicle. But then in 2005, I left the industry, did some consulting that I thought would be a few years, turned into a dozen. And then I came back to the Chronicle in 2018 as the Graybeard. Sort of gray. And
yeah, I got it here.
Yeah, I see. And so yeah, I've seen some stuff. I know people.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I've been able to try to at least bring some of that institutional memory to covering what we're dealing with now, and realizing the ways in which some of this is very in some of what we're seeing in the reaction, in the response to COVID, the impacts of that in the economy, the questions about policing, public safety, what we're looking at in this budget. Some of this reflects like enduring Austin political issues. It takes 30 years to really resolve some of these. And some of it is a paradigm shift that is really recent and immediate. As with public, and particularly on the police reform issues. I mean, that is what in Austin political terms is like an overnight change between what was the norm and what is now the norm. Yes, I keep writing in my column, there are exactly 0 members of the city council who are, in line with kind of what had been standard. Public safety is the most important thing council does, and so it should get the most money. And there's really no amount of money that's too much to spend on it. And now it's completely different. So,
well, and I think part of that is not assuming that heavily armed officers is the only way to spend public safety dollars, right? Sure. We're as a community, as we go through this work, we're still gonna spend a lot of money on safety, arguably more than we spend now. Once we do better at targeting the resources to the needs.
Mm-hmm. And realizing that there are more things that are public safety, like you mentioned when you're talking about the PSC and your scope, code enforcement, that was not considered a public safety function really back in the day. And I mean, the way we do code enforcement now at the Austin Code Department, I mean, that is more intentional than it ever used to be. And public facing, trying to actually engage with citizens and realizing that some of the things that people call 911 for are actually things that could be handled by code enforcement or mental health. Well, mental health is kind of its own glaring need that we've known about for a while. But, I tell people, it's, if we had better code enforcement, better handling of people who are intoxicated, and we do have a sobering center now, which is great. Better road design so that we didn't have as many traffic fatalities, and better handling of, and this is of course a much bigger problem, better handling of family violence, then we really would not need, it would be very clear that we do not need to spend $440 million a year on policing. And when people have reacted badly at first, people, probably like many in District 6, to the concept of defunding the police, or just were stunned by it. I don't even think they reacted badly. They were shocked. They didn't know what it meant. The more that you talk to people about how much money this is, relative to the budget, the general fund budget, as you were saying, then they start to say, well, yeah, what is that all being spent on? And what is it for? No, I don't have like much fear of violent crime in my neighborhood, and I don't often interact with the police. And so you can start to have that conversation. It takes longer and is more systemic, and needs to be more systemic than just saying let's cut $100 million because the passions of the moment would make it politically possible to do so. But I think that the commitment that at the end, I would say like this is obviously more for you to answer, but in the next couple of years, by the end of say fiscal 21 or 22, we will have done this. And that's, part of me is, this is something that I remember writing about in the 90s about how much we spent on policing. And like when the first meet and confer contract was signed with APA in 1999, at which point they became the highest paid police officers in a metro area in Texas. And we had reasons for doing that. And we thought that it would be important to do that to create a more stable and more professionalized police force. And in return for that, we got the beginnings of oversight with the police monitor. But even back at the time, when we were going through the dot-com bust and various instability in the economy and cutbacks all over the city, taking that hard look at police spending and saying, is this really something that we should be spending 40% of our budget on? Was very politically unpopular, and nobody really wanted to do it. And now everybody wants to do it.
Well, it all comes down to being able to answer the question about who shows up when you call 911.
Yeah.
Because as I've made it clear to folks, as I've also made it clear to officers, no one is saying that a call goes unanswered. The problem is we built one ginormous department to respond to all the calls. And
right.
You just, it's, I've got my hammer logo up here almost as a sign, right? Every problem is a nail, so we built a bigger hammer. Well, that's just not realistic as, when we're on the cusp of being the 10th largest city in America. The last thing I want to ask you about, Mike, since you've covered this area for a long time, we are contemplating putting a transportation item on the ballot this November that is itself unprecedented in scale. And this isn't the first kind of crack at doing significant public transportation in this community. I'm really curious about your thoughts on where we are with that and how it relates to the past.
And this is another thing where I think you're seeing a fairly, not as rapid as with policing, but a paradigm shift in the way that Austinites are thinking about it. And, kind of pushed along by the way that Austin has grown and changed, and the way that, like your political community has developed in District 6. That back in 2000, when Capital Metro first put a rail plan on the ballot, I don't think anyone in District 6 was particularly into it. But now you can see that, yes, transit alternatives would be important to all parts of the city. And the fact that we missed that opportunity in 2000 to build, by less than 2,000 votes on Election Day 2000, the same Bush Gore election day. It was one of the most surreal days of my life. We would have had rail in, Central Austin. We would already be like in phase 3 of expanding a rail system. So now that we have to do it, we have to buy 2 or 3 generations worth of development all at once. But I think people understand that, yes, that's better to do that than to kind of do half of it, or, start from the premise that it's going to be unpopular to spend money on transit. So we have to do as little of it as possible and always balance it off with road spending, which within the city as opposed to regionally, for political purposes. That's what, the polls were telling people, is that they would only do so much for transit. And I think that's changed because people realize that what they want is results. They want something that's actually going to be effective. They don't, they don't want something that does too little. That was the old mantra for defeating rail in 2000 and 2014 from our friend Gerald Doherty, who's now, an elder statesman. Costs too much, does too little. And he was kind of right about it in the sense that it wasn't as ambitious as Austin needed even at the time. And after 20 years of constant growth, ever worsening traffic, greater awareness of the impact of that traffic, not just on, stress and stuff, but, physical, actual health impacts and the environmental damage and the climate emergency, people are getting on board with this. So I think that's where we are. And being able to come in and position it in a way that also, there was also another part of that was that because Capital Metro was not the city and was sort of for all of the reasons, Capital Metro didn't have as much political support as it needed to be competent all the time at what it was delivering. And so it ended up having a fairly bad reputation for a long time that it has now been able, I think, under Randy, to move past. There have been past CEOs who have moved past bad reputation periods of Capital Metro. But I think this time it's really stuck. But part of it is because they've got a really good partnership with the city and with other entities in the region. And what we're looking at doing here is it's more like what we did when we created Central Health and then expanded it to do the medical school, or or expanded ACC to cover a much larger area and set its tax rate. So you're looking at a tax rate for Project Net that's going to be about equivalent to those two, which is something that people are willing to pay for something that they know the community needs. And so I think that the pandemic is confounding all of this, of course, and I don't know that what a November election is really going to be like under these circumstances on this issue. But absent that, you could see that, yes, after 30 years of trying to do this, we finally kind of figured out how to do it in a mature way that actually solves the problems that we have and that everybody can buy into. So I think it would be a shame for it to not happen.
I'll add another common phrase to the opposition campaign back in 2000. If we don't build it, they won't come. A phrase that very much has been proven false. Proven false.
Yes.
And District 6, probably more than any other part of town, knows that you can't just build more roads and expect your traffic to improve. I moved out to D6 before it was District 6. You talk about 2000.
Right.
There are whole neighborhoods in my district that did not exist back then.
Of course.
And I moved out before 183 turned into a highway, lived through all of that road construction, and traffic is worse now than it was then. Because when you expand a highway, right, what do? You make it possible to build more homes in Cedar Park, Leander, and Liberty Hill. You're not actually helping the folks that live along that newly expanded highway. I have some similar issues with I-35. But when you talk about transit, that's a very different game. Now you're talking about benefiting the community that is around that investment. And with District 6, at least, we are the one part of town that has a train. We have a train now. And that train is full by the time it leaves District 6. At least, pre-pandemic when everyone was going to work. Every day full. Every day full. And, it's not the world's greatest train. The route is circuitous because we were doing it on the cheap under a freight line, and there hasn't been development at the stations, and there's all this stuff that would make it better. But even that train full. Train full. Imagine how many people will benefit from a well-planned, right through the heart of the city, train to the airport. You mean I could take a train to the airport now? I'm excited about it, and you know, if the council were unilaterally raising taxes to that scale, I don't know that I could go there. But the opportunity to lay out the right plan and make the case to the voters is something I'm very excited about for this November. And there's going to be a lot more work coming on that as we get into our budget adoption and our ballot adoption and contract with the voters, and we got just a couple of weeks left to get that done.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty action packed, and then there'll be a council election. So.
Yeah, I get to share the ballot with the items, so that'll be fun too. That'll be fun too. Well, Mike, thank you so much for joining the show today. You know, the Chronicle is doing great work, doing great coverage. The reporters that work in your area, they really do a good job giving the nuance and all the challenges that we face trying to do the right thing at City Hall. And love your column. On point, man. Your column is on point.
Thanks so much,
Mike.
I appreciate the opportunity. Thanks, Jimmy.
All righty. Thanks. Yeah, you know, they do some great reporting. They really do. And as you know, if the issues we were addressing were easy, you wouldn't need a city council, but these issues are hard. I really would love to have him back on and talk about the history of homelessness in this community, because that's another issue that didn't come out of nowhere in the last year, something that councils have been wrestling with, and I would argue failing to address for many, many, many years. And we'll see. We're gonna take up parts of that in the Public Safety Committee as well, because there are public safety elements to that situation. All the things, right? That's what it comes down to for the city council. Everybody expects us to solve all the problems, and damn it, we're going to do our best. That's all we've got for the show today. This might be my longest show ever. Sorry for everybody, or you're welcome. Either way, depending on how you look at it. I hope everybody stays safe out there. Please stay home. Please keep wearing your masks. You know, have food delivered from local restaurants, everything that we can do to keep this community safe. We will get through this pandemic together, but only if we're taking care of each other. So everybody stay safe and ultimately stay home.